of our country's history. Nothing was ever won without peaceful demonstration, whether it was veterans' benefits after World War II, whether it was civil rights, and now taking our country back from those that seek to harm it.
Well, did you have questions about NAFTA?
I retired from Toledo Jeep, and I followed your career for the last 30-some years. Back in 1992, Bill Clinton came to Toledo Jeep on a campaign stop, and you were there, and I witnessed the whole production, and you were right away outspoken against NAFTA and these trade agreements which Bill Clinton was pushing. And I remember you pleading with him not to pass NAFTA. And we've seen the result of these trade agreements and what they've done to the middle-class working people of America over the last 20-some years. And we see now, like this last decade, there's been zero job growth and stagnant wages because of these trade agreements. I'd like to know what are your opinions of how this is played out, and how these trade agreements played out, and how can we change them?
Well, first of all, he was just in town the other night for an event where they charged $10,000 a head to get in. You didn't see my name on the roster of those who walked in that room. And you could say, well, gee, she shouldn't hold a grudge. It isn't for me. It's for our people. It's for our country and what happened to it. And frankly, it's for liberty. Because when you sign an agreement with a country that's undemocratic, whether it's China or in Mexico where you have no rule of law, or if you're talking about Saudi Arabia, which is a religious dictatorship, and you sign agreements with these countries, you undermine liberty on the face of the globe. And I'm a freedom lover. Our family, our ancestors suffered greatly. We think we know something about liberty and how precious it really is. So if you as president sign an agreement where liberty is not your first priority, you end up hurting liberty globally. And I feel that's what they did. Now, for the people who live in these other countries, who are working in those factories, they're not free. You think in China, if someone makes something, that they really earn a living wage? The people who own the company do. And the kickbacks to the government, they make plenty of money to get those contracts. But the average person really doesn't benefit. If you look at Mexico, oh my goodness, their standard of living has gone down. And one of the most astonishing experiences I had with the United Auto Workers, though they were losing jobs to Mexico because of NAFTA, where GM became the largest employer in Mexico after the state oil company in Mexico. Workers from the UAW actually were collecting health items, medicines, bandages, to take down to the workers of Mexico because they felt so sorry for them working under those conditions. I'll never forget that. It was so selfless to do that, and because they knew that the people there had to go back and live in their hovels at night, and they were working under non-union, very exploitative conditions. But they were thinking about the future. They weren't just thinking about the present. They were going down saying, life can be better. We understand. We've lived through what you're going to go through now. Where if they try to organize a union, the state comes in, and this happened in Hermosillo, which was a Ford plant. They shot over the crowd.
You've been down there.
Yeah, I've been down there. I see how they work. I see the people can't afford to buy what they make. And so they exploit workers just like they did in our country, until we had laws put on the books where labor became a function of contract, and it was given a value in the law in this country. And it took nearly 200 years to achieve that in our nation. And it's always at risk. It's always at risk. When you give undemocratic states a chance to, the leaders of those states, to exploit their own workforce, which these trade agreements do, and defile the environment and not uphold the rule of law, you weaken liberty globally. I just will never be a part of that equation.
You speak of the UAW in Mexico. Now, the TARP monies that were spent to bail out the General Motors and Chrysler, and they forced the contract changes with the UAW, cut their wages, and they've shut down numerous plants. They've outsourced the work to Mexico and other countries, but yet it was supposed to be a jobs program for the United States. Do you think that whole process was transparent?
That process was very unfair, and we tried to get in the TARP bill Buy America language. We couldn't get it through the Congress of the United States. And I think those members of Congress who aren't willing to vote for that shouldn't be in Congress. I feel that strongly about it. And that's where the younger generation has to measure up. We have to bring them up. We have to engage them politically. Politics isn't a bad thing. Those people who try to turn you off of politics, if they can keep you not involved, they win. If you never get on the mat, right, you really cede victory. And so they want to neuter people. They want to take people's hope away. They want to make you immobilized because they win without trying. We have to challenge that. I feel I've been doing that my whole life, trying to challenge the existing system. And it's very hard, but you can't give up because America is too important to the world, and those who fought for her gave everything. And we can't forget that. We can't be spoiled in our generation and say she's not worth the fight. We have to measure up to those who came before us and created a path to liberty. We can't tarnish her as we move into America's third century.
I've got a quick question while we're on that topic. With your experience and wisdom in politics, could you give any advice to future politicians as to what can be done differently?
Right. I think the worst part of serving at the federal level is campaign finance and the money that goes into politics. We have to get it out. We have to go back to a system where ordinary people can participate. So we need campaign finance reform. We either have to put spending limits on federal candidates for the presidency and Congress, or we have to federally finance it somehow. And we have to offer free television time as a condition of broadcasting over the media. We have to require it. And we can do that through the Federal Communications Commission. Britain does it, Canada does it, other countries do it. Those that hold power, however, don't want that to happen. So if you were to ask me what would be issue number one, I'd say campaign finance reform, because it gives ordinary people a chance to run. The last presidential election, both candidates raised $250 million. How does the ordinary person do that? And the largest contributor in both parties was Wall Street. So how does the average person do that? I think the other thing young people can do is find someone in politics that you like in your area, and be careful. Be careful who you pick. But volunteer there or get a paid internship in their office so you can learn about how the system operates. Get involved in local campaigns. Out of all the people that run, there must be one person that you really admire that has lived in that community their whole life, who has a track record, and then think about networking the young people across the country. Maybe there's only 13 or 12 at the beginning. I always say Christ had 12 apostles, and look, he made a pretty major impact in the world, right? So you don't have to have 100,000 people to start with. You can have a few who really try hard, love their community very much, and I look for people who are rooted in their community, not just people who kind of transplant themselves there because they can run for office, but people who have a track record of helping their area, not just in elected life, but who come out of small business, who come out of working in shelters for the homeless, who come out of our medical systems, who have shown that they want to help their community. I would look for people like that, not just because you're the son of a congressman or whatever, but that you really are at once with your community. Those are and many of the people that should run for office come from those kinds of backgrounds, but they never see themselves as running for office. They think office holding is some kind of elevated position. It's hard work. You're a public servant. You're there to serve the people. So we should find the people most committed to their community and run them. People who've shown that they have helped people in their region, and we should seek them out and try to mentor them, because a lot of those people never think to run for office, and they would be excellent office holders.
It's one of the main topics, I think, too, of the documentary is that, how we're, I don't mean to be stereotypical, but a majority of people, at Capitol Hill or political figures come from wealthy backgrounds.
Right. And
who are you going to look out for? People you relate to. Who do you relate to when your friends are all millionaires?
That's right.
That's, you know what I mean? So if 99% of America, the average person, doesn't come from a background of wealth, but yet the 1% in Congress, a lot of them, come from wealthy backgrounds, I think it's difficult for them to at least understand or relate on some level the issues that average people, working class people, deal with.
When someone comes from a very privileged background, you're absolutely right. Intellectually, they might think they understand, but they have no idea how harshly life bears down on those who lose their jobs, they don't have enough food, they don't have health insurance, they can't afford to send their children to college, they really, or to any kind of training after high school, any kind of enrichment. They don't understand the vice that those situations place on the ordinary family and how difficult it is. They simply haven't lived it.
Recently there was legislation to re-regulate Wall Street, and you voted that legislation down. What were your reasons?
My reasons were that it's a hollow bill. That in fact this re-regulation of Wall Street is a sieve, and it didn't do anything to break up the big banks. It essentially grandfathered the institutions that have done this to America. It's handed them all this money. It didn't take the bonuses away. And it exempted energy derivatives, which is going to be a huge market in terms of over-the-counter trading. And so to me, unless you have a bill that breaks up these big banks that did this to us and democratizes banking across this country, why should 5 banks have 40% of the deposits in this country going up to 50%?
Why has Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae been given a blank check? Sorry.
Because members of Congress allowed it to happen. And essentially what's happened at the federal level is that the banks that did this, and this is why I fought so hard against them back in 2008, their wrongdoing was allowed, the debts related to that were put on the taxpayers. At Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, FHA, the General National Mortgage Association, Government National Mortgage, Ginnie Mae, FHA, the VA, they dumped their toxic assets on the people of the United States rather than resolving what was wrong in the banking system in the normal way, which is to go back to each of those banks, to unwind them, to take their good assets and to restructure